Now, my last lesson for you today, which I always like to save one of the best lessons for at the very end. Not that I don't think everything else you learned is not great, but I would say this is one of the things that I'm saving for you because a lot of times people are so unaware of what's happening in our industry, and I think this is important for them to know. So remember at the very beginning, I said, let's pretend that first portfolio buy was with a company that we may have heard of. That's right. I said, let's pretend it was Vanguard. Well, guess what? That actually was the Vanguard S&P 500 index fund during those period of time. Now, by any means, I'm not saying it's a bad fund. I actually think it's a good fund. I actually have some of my clients in it. But I want you to think about this. What if you had invested your entire portfolio in the Vanguard S&P 500 index fund during that time? Do you think in that situation, if you were withdrawing money, you would have survived it? In that exact example that we saw? Obviously not. Why? Because the sequence of return didn't work in our favor. Now, we also heard Warren Buffett always say, well, if something happens to me, I want my wife to put majority of our portfolio in the S&P 500 Vanguard fund, and she'll be fine. And you know what? He's a smart guy. She will be fine. They have billions, and they don't even live on anything close to that. So, of course, they'll be okay. So, if you're in a situation like Warren Buffett where you don't need your portfolio, then you have nothing to worry about. But if you're like the rest of my clients, where your hard-earned money and savings is to supplement your retirement, then obviously this is important to you. And why I'm bringing this up to you is you never want to be in a situation where you are allocated 100% in one fund. Now you may be thinking, Crystal, do you think I'm nuts? Of course I don't have all my portfolio in the S&P 500 index fund. I have diversification. Well, here is what I want to share with you today. And this is where I used to, on my radio show, get a lot of hate calls of advisors calling and saying, why am I saying this? But I believe the industry and the consumer really needs to be educated on this, and this is really important, is that there are right now, Wall Street's gotten lazy, money managers gotten lazy. So sometimes what's happening in people's portfolio, they're creating all these different funds, but really the idea is it's mimicking the result of the S&P 500 index fund. They're actually in the industry term called closet funds. And it's really important to make sure that that's not what you're in. And let me give you an example of why. I just met an engineer who was very into his numbers, and he was like, Crystal, the one thing I have done is I have diversified so much. And you know what? He had done a great job diversifying. He even had 2 advisors. We looked at all these funds. My team had to enter everything in to get the result, actually with so many different holdings. And at the very end, we found out that literally the entire 2 portfolios were mimicking the result of the S&P 500 index fund. So I turn around, I'm going to call him Bob for a second, and I said, Bob, if you're okay with the volatility, then you may as well be in the S&P 500 index fund because you'll be paying only about 0.2% versus what you're paying your advisor, which is 1.5% plus more internal fees of another possibly 1%. So that's 2.5% for the same result that the S&P 500 would have done for you. Well, obviously his goal was never to have been in a closet fund. He didn't intend that. He wanted to be diversified, and he was moderately conservative, yet he had ended up with a moderately aggressive portfolio mimicking an index fund. So you could be super smart. You could be in any industry and think that this could not happen to me. But because this is not really your, day-to-day job, there are things you may miss out on that you just don't know.